My friends, today you're in for a treat. So if you're out there thinking about an audiobook, today's guest, my friend Jeff Guillot, he's an expert in audiobook production who's helped authors turn their words into immersive audio experiences that connect, convert, and scale. From casting the perfect voice to mastering distribution, Jeff knows what it takes to make your audiobook work for you. I had the privilege of working with Jeff back in Scribe Media days, and it was fantastic. He's a great guy, really knows his stuff, super experienced in this world. So today I really wanted to have him on to kind of share with us the importance of developing not just any audiobook, but the audiobook that works for you. Jeff, welcome to the show, my friend. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Hussein. So good to be here, man.
Yeah, man.
And thanks for that beautiful introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I didn't do it. Jeff, can you give a background about just where you've been? How did you get into audiobook production? I know you're a master at these things, but just a little bit of a background.
Sure. I have been, as of this year, I've been doing audiobooks for 16 years. So it was quite a while ago when I got started. I had moved out to Los Angeles. I spent a year at LA recording school to learn how to be an audio engineer. And coming out of that, I landed a gig at an audiobook production studio where I spent 12 and a half years ultimately. It was really a matter of right place, right time. I learned so much about producing an audiobook. I had an opportunity to work in every single phase of audiobook production, from editing to quality control, directing, mastering, distribution, sales, business development, and then a whole host of other non-audiobook related things that I will often joke about in personal conversations.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was 12 and a half years there, and I hit sort of the ceiling around 9 years in. Like there was no more growth. I had done everything I could for the company. The company was set in how it did things, and I started looking elsewhere. Scribe had been one of our clients and just absolutely fell in love with them. So chased Scribe for a few years, came down when they were building the studio and spent a few years there. And as of this March, I am no longer part of that team. I launched Lucent Audio, my own business, and here I am helping authors make audiobooks.
Congratulations, man. That's so cool. What a crazy story, because yeah, you when I talked to you back when we were working at Scribe, you were sharing sort of your trajectory and everything that you picked up along the way. And man, you were sharp and people loved working with you. I remember there was like one or two authors basically getting their recordings done, and the way you were coaching them was just so cool to me. You definitely know your stuff, man. So I want to get into the nitty gritty of all these things today, because a lot of our listeners are, of course, authors. Some of them are experts who can who work with authors as well. So today I really wanted to just talk about the audiobook world, something we don't talk about frequently here, but I know it's a big portion of what authors think about when creating a book. And sometimes it's a choice, right? Like they really don't really feel like they want to do that because it's an added expense, of course, but there's a lot of benefits to that investment. So I look at it, it's not an expense, it's actually an investment. So what's the first thing an author should think about before recording an audiobook?
An author should start thinking about the audiobook when they're writing their book. Like the sooner that you start thinking about what that's going to be like in the process of writing your book, the better and smoother the whole thing is going to be. So, from the get-go, as an author's writing, they should be thinking about, how is this going to sound when I'm narrating this, or when a narrator's narrating this? We have a tendency to sometimes write in different ways than we speak. And the more we can line our writing up with how we speak, the more natural it's going to come across to listeners, or readers for that matter.
Beautiful. What's the hardest thing for authors when they're making that decision what usually comes up for them, whether they decide to go audiobook or not, especially in the nonfiction space?
I think so much has changed in the industry just in the time that I've been here. I see it as every book being published should have an audiobook. We're just that's how it is now. More and more listeners are consuming books in that way only. So by not having an audiobook, you're leaving a population just out of the loop when it comes to your book. They're not going to pick up
Sure.
a book and read it.
Right.
I think the hardest decision for an author is not necessarily whether to do an audiobook or not do an audiobook. They should be doing one, and I think most authors realize that. The decision really becomes who's going to narrate the book, and that's where a lot of
Mm,
authors will struggle.
mm. Yeah, that's okay. So with the choosing either a narrator or doing their own or doing it in their own voice, um, how do you help an author figure out what direction to go? Because I feel like that's probably the number one thing that comes up because it's not easy to, no matter how much you think it's easy to narrate a book, it is not. Trust me, I know. I've tried it, right? And I'm gonna do my own book. However, um, I almost like I'm gonna take like a voice acting class to do it right because I really want to do my own, but I now know how hard it is because I went into the studio and I tried it, and man, my story starts off pretty freaking sad and like it reminds me of my dad, and I got really emotional just like reading it and being in that environment. So that was my experience, and I'm like, okay, I need to take a step back and like figure out how to do this in a way that is meaningful, but obviously uses my voice and all these things. So there's a lot of great authors with phenomenal stories, especially memoir, also nonfiction, who have a lot of deep stories that come from all kinds of different backgrounds and things. So, how do you help authors figure out what direction to go? And is it disgenuine to have a narrator? Like a lot of people, I feel like, I don't know, at least for me, I'm like, this has to be like in my voice. You know what I'm saying? But that's not necessarily the case. I think that's just in my head. How do you help people figure out that path?
All right. So the first thing that anybody really needs to understand is that narrating an audiobook is not reading a book out loud while somebody records you. It's offering a performance.
Mm,
And that performance has to be engaging for the entire duration of your audiobook. If it's not, you're going to lose listeners. So when it comes to who's going to narrate, it's important that the author understands that aspect of it, that if they want to narrate, they're going to have to give that really compelling performance, and they're going to have to put their trust in the producer and the team that they're working with, because the team is here to support an author in that. Where I'm going to help an author get paired with the right director if they're not necessarily working with me here in Austin. A director's job is to elevate that performance. But to dial it back before we get into that stuff, I have authors think about where they want to go with this and where they want to go with their businesses or their lives. So, what I mean by that is if an author is in a very public facing position, they're on stages, they're on podcasts, the public is getting to know them, getting to know their voice, then by all means, they should probably be narrating their audiobook. At that point,
mm,
it becomes an issue of time. Do they have the time to do it? Because it's a bit of a time demand. But if that's not what the author is doing, then I suggest working with a professional narrator. Narrators are trained actors. They're going to understand how to offer that compelling performance to the listeners that they work with. And then it just is a matter of casting, where I'm going to help the author find the right voice for their project if it's not their own voice.
yeah, well said. I love that. Yeah, if you are in the public, you're building a platform, you're building an online thing, podcast, you should probably narrate it, and you can get some
Yeah.
coaching. So with that, if an author does do the narration themselves, walk me through that trajectory. What does that look like as far as working with someone in your studio?
Excellent. I'm networked with studios all over the place. So
Yeah,
it's not necessarily that an author needs to come here in Austin and work with me, although if they want to do that, that's great. I have a great studio in New York and a great studio in LA that I will often refer authors to if they're not local.
yeah.
So when it comes into to narrating, prep is a big part of that. They have to practice, they have to practice narrating. So the first thing that I'll recommend is they walk into a walk-in closet with an iPad and their script loaded on an iPad and start narrating. And it sounds kind of silly, but that's going to sort of replicate most vocal booths that you're going to be in when you go to a studio to record your audiobook. So part of it is getting familiar with being in a tighter spot while you're doing this. But the other thing is paying attention to your own performance notes as you're practicing. How is your energy holding up? Are you understanding where to put the emphasis in your sentences, in your paragraphs? And if you're having trouble, you can use a tool like iAnnotate, which is a great app that lets you mark up a script. You can make annotations, underline, highlight, things like that. You can also work with a narration coach as you're prepping. And I have a wonderful narration coach that I like to pair authors up with, where it'll be a few hour-long sessions that they do with the coach. They'll practice narrating, they'll get performance feedback, they'll get some homework to work on, and then they come back to the next session and they sort of build on what they've learned before. But the whole point of prep is that the more that they can do in advance of their recording sessions, the smoother the sessions are going to be.
Yeah. And okay, so in the preparation phase, I was told, and this helped like create just to read it, like read the chapter. The guy said, read the chapter 3 to 5 times. Just read it over and over and over again, and read it slowly, breathe, figure out and like highlight places where you want to enunciate, like really slow down the words, especially if they're a little bit foreign or whatever. And that was really great. Like that was my first recording session compared to my second one was like a world of difference. And that gave me a lot to work on. What else do you recommend as far as the preparation phase besides the reading it over and like really carving out time for it? Because it is going to take some time. Do you try to record? Also, my second part to that, do you try to record the whole thing in one sitting, or do you try to record over a span of a couple of days?
As far as the prep, it really is just getting the reps in, working with a narration coach, doing the practice, and as you said, reading it over and over again, going over it, getting that performance more and more dialed in. That's what's going to really help you when you're at the studio. As far as how long it's going to take you, most books it's going to take more than one day. It's authors will generally narrate at a 3-to-1 recording ratio. So that means for every 3 hours they spend recording, we get an hour of audio out. So to do some backwards math with that, you can take the word count of the book, you can divide it by 9,000. That tells us about how long the audiobook is going to be in hours. We get about 9,000 words an hour out in the English language.
So yeah, we're talking about studio time, and we're talking about how much time it takes to actually sit down and record this thing. Can you, just continue telling us a little bit more about that, please, Jeff?
Sure. So the biggest decider with an audiobook is going to be the word count. That's going to unlock a lot of this information for us. So if we'll use a 90,000 word book, that's going to make math easy for reasons that'll make sense in a second. We get about 9,000 words an hour out in the English language. So if you have a 90,000 word book, you divide by 9,000, that tells us your audiobook is going to be 10 hours long. An author is generally going to narrate close to a 3-to-1 recording ratio. Professional narrators lean a little bit closer to 2-to-1 when it comes to recording. And what this means is that an author is going to take 3 hours to record 1 hour of audio. Pro narrators will do 2 hours for every 1 hour of audio. So that 10-hour audiobook that we're talking about is going to be about 30 hours of studio time for the author to record. Audiobook sessions are usually 6 hours long. So for a 10-hour book, you'd be in the studio for 5 days.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Minimum. That sounds about right. Very good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about things for authors to avoid, like red flags to look for when when they're trying to figure out the audiobook for their work. What are things they should avoid, or mistakes that come up, or maybe red flags from the studios that would come up, things to look for?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing when an author is stepping into this is to make sure they're working with professionals. Audiobook production is such a niche industry, and with how much the overall industry has grown in the last dozen years or so, there's been a lot of studios that have looked to audiobook recording basically as a revenue stream. It can get somebody in the door at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, which is something a traditional studio might have previously struggled with. What they're not, the things that happen when you're working with a studio like that is they're not going to have their systems dialed in for audiobook recording or audiobook
Mm,
direction. They're not going to understand how to elevate an author's performance, what kind of direction to give, what kind of feedback to give. When
mm,
it comes to specs, those studios often struggle with audiobook specs, and it's not because they're not great studios. They just don't do audiobooks. It's a different thing from the normal. So unless they have somebody there that's experienced, it's going to be a little bit like a fish out of water. They're just not knowing the best way to do things. So I think an author should vet the audiobook experience of anybody that they're looking to work with, and you want to make sure that your producer has depth of experience. That depth of experience is going to help make sure the process is seamless for you when it comes down to it.
love it. Can you talk a little bit about how sales typically compare to print and ebooks, especially around nonfiction, of course? I know that's been a major shift in the last decade or so, just because just more people listening to books in general. I feel like there's been a shift. I don't know. I could be very wrong, but I feel like the need to have an audiobook has increased because of that. Can you tell us a little bit about how sales typically do for audiobooks in comparison?
I don't have any super specific data that I can share with you there, but I can share a story that sort of is representative with recent
Sure.
developments in the industry. So a while back, Spotify made the big announcement that they were stepping into the audiobook industry. And the audiobook industry at large took a step back and a deep breath and were a little worried about how that was going to impact the overall industry. There was thought that Spotify was going to pull listeners away from Audible or other retail platforms. What happened was the industry grew significantly. The folks that were subscribed to Spotify did not already have subscriptions or weren't listening to audiobooks. So Spotify introduced audiobooks to a whole population of people that they already had in their system that weren't taking audiobooks in elsewhere. And
Mm,
that's the kind of thing we're just seeing across the board. More and more people are turning to audiobooks. Audiobook sales are booming. The industry at large has seen double-digit growth for, I think we're at 12 years straight at this point.
yeah, that's phenomenal. What a move by Spotify, by the way. I remember when they did that. Um,
Yeah.
and that comes back to, like, okay, so who are the top players? Like, obviously, the minute we say audiobook, we just think Audible. At least I do. Who in your world you're like, because I know there's plenty more audiobook distribution, audiobook peoples. Who are the top players in this field, in this world?
All right. So if we're talking about production, I would say John Marshall Media has been in the game for a long time. The studio I worked with, Dion Audio, has been in the game for a long time. Um, my personal favorite is actually Mosaic Audio, who's another great producer, and there's a few other, but those are the three that come to mind when it comes to
Right.
producers.
Sure.
When it comes to distribution, that's a bit of a different story. You know,
Sure.
Audible still dominates the market. Amazon and Audible together have something like 65% of the market. All of the other all of the other platforms make up the rest of the market there. So Audible still is carrying the bulk. But when it comes to distribution, I prefer Authors Republic as a solution for authors. They offer really broad distribution. The audiobook will be on approximately 60 different platforms. It gets on all the major ones, so it'll still be on Amazon and Audible. It'll be on Google Play, Spotify. It'll get into the library market via Hoopla and Overdrive, I think, or something changed with Overdrive recently. But it gets into the library market. And there's close to 60 other platforms that it'll go to, and their customer service is phenomenal.
Love it. Author Republic. That's very good. So how can authors use their audiobook? You know, my whole thing is like, how do you use your book as a lead generating, door opening sort of way for services, businesses, especially, again, back to nonfiction, right? So how have you seen authors, maybe there's a story there or two, how have you seen authors use their audiobooks to maybe use it as a tool, as a further tool to assist their businesses?
Absolutely. There's a few different ways authors can do this. There's probably unlimited number of ways authors can do this, but one of the main things is from the distribution platforms. Each distribution platform is going to have a way for authors to get free download codes. So one of the things they can do is they can talk to whichever distribution platform they're working with, get free download codes, and they can distribute those free download codes to folks that are going to help generate interest in the audiobook. These can be reviewers, these can be friends, these can be industry people, they could be clients. It really doesn't matter who you're giving them to. It's just that you're giving them out to generate some interest in your book. Another thing that authors can do is chop, an author probably wouldn't do this themselves. Their producer would help them with this, but you can chop up bits of the audiobook. So you can take key segments, compare that with the book cover or an image of the author or the company's business, if that's what the author's doing, and you could promote that across social media. You could cut up the first chapter, you could put it on YouTube against the book cover, something like that, as another way to sort of put teasers out there to help generate that interest.
Love it. I like that a lot, man. That's my intention of how I want to use my book, is really my audiobook is to like just give it away, gift it away, and use it in a way that I want it to live sort of on my website. Of course I want to put it on audiobook and stuff, but like Audible, but like I kind of want to make it live on my website and point people to it when they're checking out my book. I'm like, no, just go listen to it for free. You can listen to it there for free, or like the first 4 chapters or whatever, if you're interested, But what are other unique ways of how people have done their audiobook that you found like, oh, that's interesting, I've obviously done this for a long time. So there's obviously like music and narrators and pauses between chapters where you can do like sort of mini interviews. Like that was a cool thing that the David Boggins thing had. Like, what are some things that authors can think about to make their audiobook experience unique to them? What are some ideas?
Yeah, I think you hit on one of the key things that I really think David Goggins, I don't know if that he created that, if it was just an idea, he learned it from somewhere else, but so many authors that I help in this process reference his audiobook and say they want to do the same thing. So doing that chapter-based interview in between the chapters as a way to provide some bonus material for the listeners that they're not going to find in the text is really enticing for listeners. I think that's a key thing. Other ways if an author's not going to narrate their whole book, other things they can do to generate some excitement, they can narrate a part of their book. They can narrate the introduction, or if they wrote a foreword, or if they had somebody else write a foreword, they can have that person lend their voice to that part of their book. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I've been thinking a lot through this because I want to narrate mine. And there's even like a video element I want to add to mine. It's because I have a YouTube channel and I like video, especially. There's a part of me that wants to add like a bonus chapter. I want to call it like the secret chapter, right? That you only get in the audiobook. So it kind of gives you a reason to download it or whatever, right? So there's something out there. There's what was there was a guy I met who was gonna basically that he co-wrote a book with his wife, and they were gonna kind of go every other and like do, you know, so like you can make it unique in that way. Like, you know, a part of me wants to like record some of my chapters like in my van, but have them recorded, like video recorded too, because I have like a podcast van or whatever. So like for me personally, I'm always thinking like, okay, yes, you're just hearing my voice, but is there anything else I can do to this, right? Is that, yes, of course, music. Maybe I can have like a guest come and do a feature component, or guest read a component. That could be cool. So I just think about like, what are some cool ways to make your audiobook stand out, because it is media. It is your potential opportunity to create something that I don't want to say has never been done before, but like do it your way, whatever that means to you. And I think there's just an opportunity there because it's media, it's sound, it's visual. A part of me wants to just make the whole thing like visual, where you're kind of, you know, either watching me read it, watching me like talk to the, because I can have like a teleprompter, so I can like talk to the camera, and I, you know, and then of course you can extract the voice from that, right? But me personally, I've given a lot of thought to my audiobook because I really want to make it an experience, and I think so. Just like, I don't know, maybe you don't recommend that, maybe you do recommend that. I just think about it like, here's another opportunity to like be creative and do something interesting for you so that people are drawn to it. Maybe they talk about it or reference it, and that gives it another opportunity to be shared and listened to. But I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I'm mostly with you on that. You know, this, you said a key thing there. This is media. So whatever ways that anybody can think of to use the media is going to be beneficial. It's going to be a way to introduce your material to a new audience. So having some visual components, you know, filming your narration of an audiobook, you can go back after that. You could release the whole thing. You could chop up certain bits and use it as teasers that you just sort of distributing. If you want to bring guests in to do interviews, you know, we talked about that a little before, but that's a big thing that a lot of folks do. There's really no limits. Like when it comes down to it, we just have to make sure the files hit spec when we send it to distribution or whichever platform it's going out to. So you know, the more creative you can think about it, the more possibility there's going to be.
I love that. Okay, so now we're kind of getting into like a little bit of a nitty gritty, possibly a gray area, because it's all different. But what have you noticed, and this is just from your opinion, if you will, what's the difference between a good audiobook and one that actually like sells and moves? One that, helps the author do the marketing, if you will.
I don't think you're gonna like my answer for this, but what it boils down to is marketing. That's going to be the thing that moves the needle. I mean, to some extent, if you put a celebrity on your audiobook, right, that's gonna move the needle a bit for you. If you get a really well-known celebrity, that's gonna draw some people in that maybe would not already be interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to pushing sales or getting more people into it, it's just getting your audiobook introduced to as many different people as you possibly can. And that's the magic of marketing. Right.
100%. So how do you approach casting like the right narrator for a specific genre or an audience? Like are there steps that you take? Obviously, do you interview the author? Like if somebody comes up to you and goes, hey, you know, I got this book, but I don't really want to do the narration. What are the steps you take? to help them out?
Sure. So it starts with a consult, basically, just like this. I would ask the author what kind of voice they had in mind for the narrator and get feedback from them. The more descriptive the author can be as far as how they want the narrator to sound, the easier the job becomes for me because I have clarity on what they're looking for. So that's really where it starts. I get as much as I can from the author. From there,
Yeah.
I'll dig into the book a little bit. I'll start reading the book, chapters here and there, just get a feel for the voice that it's written in, anything that I can add to what I have learned from the author as far as who this voice should be. After 16 years in the industry, I am networked with thousands of narrators. So it's never really a concern for me whether I'm going to find the right voice. I know I can find the right voice. And if the right voice isn't already on my roster, I have deep enough connections in the industry to find recommendations for new voices.
Beautiful.
But
yeah, no, that's well said.
I'll usually, I lost my train of thought there.
Yeah.
I'll usually put together about 5 to 7 auditions for an author
Like
using a few pages of their script.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so when I'm thinking about this, like as an author, and I'm like, okay, obviously this is an investment I should probably be thinking about, that I should add it into my book sort of process, especially if I'm going indie or hybrid. What am I looking at as far as, like, if I were to narrate the book, and let's say I'm in Arizona, I'm in Tucson, right? And I'm gonna go, I use this little studio called Luna to kind of test out some things to see if I liked it, if I really wanted to do it, which I will. But but I want to work with you. I want to hire you, but obviously I'm not in the same town. What does that look like? What am I looking at as far as like cost range? And then adding on, like, once you give me that, then adding on, what does a narrator cost in addition to that?
Sure. So working with me, location really doesn't matter because of this, we can do remote things. So all that matters in that sense is that we have a studio that has audiobook familiarity, that they understand how to record, they understand how to hit spec. I can jump in, I can remote direct sessions, I can have another director remote direct if I'm not available, or maybe the studio just has deep enough roots in audiobooks that they have their own directors to use, and that's a conversation I have with the studio. I never want to put an author in a studio that doesn't know what they're doing, so I take a lot of time to vet studios, especially if they're new to me.
Yeah. Okay, that's perfect.
There was more to that question.
Yeah, well, the question was, obviously this is a question that's on a lot of people's minds, is what are the cost range, right? Like range. Obviously, for everyone, it's different. Every book is a little bit different. So what's the range typically?
Sure. The word count is the biggest decider there. Any producer you work with is going to ask for your word count. They're going to ask to take a look at your book. So there's going to be a lot of variation. What I can say with Lucent Audio is that my audiobook package starts around $5,000. And for an author, that's going to cover, I'd have to pull up the spreadsheet for tighter numbers, but it's going to cover approximately a 50,000 word manuscript. And that's whether the author is narrating or we're working with a professional narrator.
Oh, wow. That covers the cost of the narrator as well.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's effective.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And so
the trade-off, I kind of, go ahead.
No. The trade-off, please.
So the trade-off, and I often joke about this, is COVID gave the audiobook industry a gift. Pre-COVID, there was a small sort of contingent of narrators that had professional home studios. That changed with COVID. When COVID hit, all the narrators went out, they built home studios. So when we work with professional narrators, we generally don't have to pay studio time because most of them have a professional studio. When an author's recording their own audiobook, that's when we got to pay studio time. So the cost doesn't differ too much because when you're not paying for the narrator, you're paying for the studio time. And if you are paying for a narrator, you don't have to pay for the studio time. And those things sort of almost balance each other out.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. That's powerful. Okay. So I got the cost. I got, let's say I want to do it myself or pick a narrator, which is fantastic. Sounds like either or are opportunities. And if I need support or help, someone like you can help or give me a coach or someone to help me develop it a little bit further. What's the one thing that you notice makes an author maybe nervous when they go into the recording session that they can sort of be a little bit aware of? Yeah, what's something that comes up?
I think the magic words there are recording session. Like a lot of authors that get nervous over that. Just the idea of going to a studio. A lot of authors don't have experience being in studios. And even if they've done public speaking and they do a lot of that, or they've been on podcasts, uh, when you come into that studio to do an audiobook, it is such a different experience that authors often feel nervous or they're a little bit uncomfortable, and it takes sometimes close to an hour for them to settle into a groove. But there does seem to be some I don't know, I guess you call it tension around that initial recording session, that
Yeah,
you I'll talk to folks and try to build that comfort. And I think it's important for authors to remember that when they're going to the studio, studios are creative environments. Like any studio you walk into, the people at the studio are going to understand how to foster that creativity. They're going to make you feel comfortable. They're going to make you feel warm, not like temperature warm, but just kind of warm human to human connection. Studios
yeah,
are often very air conditioned.
yeah.
Uh, but it's important to remember that the folks you're working with when you're doing an audiobook, everybody's there to support you in this. Everybody is
Mm,
there working to make sure your performance is as strong as you can be. Nobody's judging you, nobody's worried about you. It's really just we have this author we're working with, and how can we sort of lift them up through this process? There's going to be things that come up during recording. There's going to be mistakes. Like it, the mouth is going to say things that are not written on the page, and that is just the part of every audiobook ever recorded. This happens. This is just part of the process. The mistakes, the
sure.
misreads, the missed words, the mispronounced words, the slurred words. It is just part of the process. So one of the things I try to remind authors of is to have fun with it. You can't have frustration sneak into the recording process, because that is going to come out of the voice. If you are frustrated, your listeners are going to know, and you don't want that to happen. So it's important to sort of, for an author, to keep that open, light mindset, to have fun with it. The whole process should be fun from start to end.
Mm,
And the folks that are working with you want to sort of foster that.
yeah, that's really cool. All right, I gotta ask you kind of a personal question. What's your favorite audiobook of all time?
You can't do that to me. You can't. You can't.
Okay, well, let
Uh,
me say.
I
Let's put it this
so
way. Yeah, go ahead. Okay.
I'll say this. Generally speaking, I have a hard time with favorites. There is just too much beauty in life for my brain to say this is better than everything else. I just can't process things that way. So what I can do is recommend things that I like or that stand out to me. One of the more
Sure.
recent audiobooks I listened to was The God of the Woods, which
Mm,
is a novel. We're
yeah,
just sort of moving in a different direction here, but the narrator
that's
of
okay.
that, I'm totally gonna butcher her name if I try to say it, and I know I shouldn't, because it sounds like it's spelled. But point being, uh, it was the first audiobook I had listened to in a long time that I really felt could be a lesson on narration in and of itself. Like,
Wow.
she was so dialed in with her performance.
Mm,
When it comes to nonfiction, I got to say, for me, David Goggins, really just, that one, I listened to that a long time ago, and it has stuck with me. And it just is always one that I will recommend to people.
yeah, yeah, that was performed really well as well. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because the person who narrated it was like his writer, wasn't it? What was his name?
Yeah.
I forget his name. Anyways, so that was really powerful. But I just felt like it was so natural for those two to work together in that way, and it actually made a lot of sense. This is beautiful, man. What else can you tell us about the audiobook industry that I'm neglecting neglecting in any way, shape, or form as far as like questions? Because I feel like I don't know it very well, and I'm trying to figure out the best questions to get out of you to help our listeners decide whether they should go the audiobook route or not and make that investment, because it is an investment. I think it's one that I'm certainly making myself. But is there anything else I'm missing around this world of audiobooks?
Okay, so the first thing there, yes, you still have to do your audiobook, and you and I have to talk about that, and we got to get it done. I'm not giving you an option to work with anybody else on this. We will figure it out.
Thank you, my man.
But yeah, of course, of course. It's important to remember this thing is a niche process. Like the whole audiobook creation from start to sending it out to the world is very niche. And each point along the way, there are different people that sort of shine in how well they do the work that they do. So, for instance, your producer is going to be your project manager for the entire operation. The producer is going to talk to you about how you want your audiobook to be, whether you're going to narrate it or you're going to work with a narrator. That producer may do casting, or that producer may have people that handle casting for them. It just depends on the structure of each production company you're talking with. If you're talking with me, I'm doing the casting for you. It's just how I like to roll. When it comes to recording, you want to make sure folks are getting into a studio, we talked about this before, that understands audiobook recording. Maybe they live close to one, maybe they don't. And if they don't, I would rather have them travel than go to a place that doesn't know what they're doing and have to sort of make magic happen when there is no magic to start with. When it comes to post-production, these are different people that are going to come to work on the project. At Lucent Audio, any project that I produce will have two people on post. There's going to be an editor and there's going to be a quality control engineer. And these two people are very dialed in. They are very experienced with what they do. The editor's job is to clean up the audio, to take out the noises, to get rid of the plosives, the mouth noise, any stomach rumbles. I had some stomach rumbles in this conversation. I don't know if they were coming through. QC is sort of the last step in that, in the sense that they're going to listen to the whole audiobook. They're going to follow along with the script. If there's anything that slipped by the editor, they're going to flag it. And they're going to, that's all going to get cleaned up for the author before it goes out for author review. When it comes to distribution, you have your distribution options. So you have to pick the one that aligns best with the author's goals, whether that's exclusive distribution with Audible or broader distribution with Authors Republic. The point being that an author can go about this in a very do-it-yourself way, but then it falls on them to piece together all these different people. When you work with an experienced producer, the producer is going to have that knowledge. They're going to have that team in place already from start to finish. They're going to have done the vetting. They're going to have built solid people that they work with, professional people that they work with. So an author can basically give themselves over to a producer, and the producer can bear the weight of that project and making sure everything, resolving whatever bumps arise and making sure the end product sparkles, or the author, is going about that themselves. And then there's going to be a pretty steep learning curve for them along that path. Ooh, audio's not coming through.
There we go. Way to lay that out beautifully. My dog was barking, so I had to mute myself. So my apologies. That was a beautiful step-by-step how to go from A to Z. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff, I have one more question for you. And that is, finish the sentence for me. When authors develop an audiobook, they ...
Oh, they are going to have such an emotional experience and I would almost say spiritual growth along with that. I can't tell you how many authors, and like we're talking primarily nonfiction here, and I'm not, what I'm about to say is not because the story is necessarily traumatic, although there are stories that have a lot of trauma in them. But I'll have authors that go to studios, and as they're narrating themselves, they will come out of that studio, they'll finish that process, and they'll be in tears. And nobody really realizes how much of yourself goes into an audiobook when you're narrating. You know what, how, I mean, that's it. Like how much of yourself you're putting into that, and when you finish it, it is an accomplishment, and it's something to be proud of, especially if you've worked with the right people along the way.
Yeah. Insanely powerful. Well said. Like I said earlier, I got very emotional when I was doing the first bit of my book, which made me, again, when I started practicing it and like realized like, okay, but in a good way, like it made me emotional because I was like, now it's kind of reliving as I say it out loud, you're kind of like it triggers the memories, it triggers the emotions that were happening. And that's what's beautiful about an audiobook is that you are sort of now painting the picture in that person's mind through their ears or maybe even through video. And that's what I love the most about audiobooks personally. I think they're so powerful in really generating the images that I want to see. I'm a very visual person. And if you are an author out there and are trying to figure out whether you want to do an audiobook or not, I hope this episode helped decipher that today for you. But also reach out to Jeff. Like, this man is truly an expert in this world. He's genuine. He's real. I've worked with him. He's not trying to sway you one way or another. Honestly, I think 5K, even 6K is pretty reasonable for an audiobook. It's an investment. And guess what? Most people are listening to books through their headphones today, whether they're walking a dog. I mean, we all listen to podcasts. It's just the next step. It's the next door neighbor, right? So Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people, I mean, besides LinkedIn, where can people reach out to you, ask you questions, maybe get on a discussion call or a consult call with you? How do they find you?
Excellent. Thanks so much for having me here today, Hussein. It's always great to see you and talk to you. This has been an excellent conversation. Thank you. As far as connecting with me, you can check out the website, lucentaudio.com. There's a link there to book a consult call with me. The consult calls are free, so just book it, grab some time on my calendar, and we will have a discussion.
Very cool.
I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah. You're active there, which I love.
Yeah, I've been doing a blog series that I'm sort of pushing out across social media. There's a Lucent Audio Instagram, and I haven't been on Twitter or X in years, but I figured with this business, why not get on X? I'm still not really, I don't understand it, but I'm putting stuff there anyway. So please interact with me on X because nobody is interacting with me there.
Do Jeff a favor.
It's just Lucent Audio across the board.
Yeah. Well, this was a great experience for me. I learned a lot. Again, if you're out there, you're an author, and you really want to go in this direction, contact Jeff. He'll help you through that work. Jeff, thanks again for joining me, my friend.
Thank you, Hussein. Love you, man.
Love you too, buddy.